Hey guys, Brad Murphy from Raleigh originally, now living full-time, the retired life at the beautiful Lake Gaston, which was our weekend home for almost 30 years, and during COVID we decided to hang out here full-time. Spent my whole career in software and tech, started 3 companies, but did a 3-year detour in home building, so I'm kind of passionate about home design, and we're standing in front of an addition I just finished recently, and like many additions, oftentimes you think you've thought of everything, and then you're done, you're like, oh, I wish I had thought of that. And so what you're looking at here is a space between a very generous 20 by 20 covered deck facing a beautiful lake. And this space here was open with no roof. And this entry to the house is to our dog spa. We have 2 beautiful golden doodles. And we live at the lake, so they get messy. And one day, recently, I say recently, 9 months ago, I said to my wife, what if we covered this and turned this into an outdoor kitchen? We've all seen the outdoor kitchen YouTube videos, and there are extraordinary videos people have done on them. And I'm an OCD guy, so I've watched all of them. And in the end, I'm kind of a designer at heart. And so my whole thing is, how do I want to design the perfect space for us or for me? And so I'm going to walk you through just high level some things that we did, how we landed on the decision that we made about how to go about it, maybe even some mistakes that we made even after having watched millions of YouTube videos, and maybe some things that'll help you guys out. First of all, let me point out, Jared Fox, my competent son-in-law and social media guru, working the camera. He may pose some questions from now and then, but I think it's really important. RecTech, you're the jerks that took me on this journey, and here's why. I'm like, one day I'm watching RecTech wood pellet stove videos. I'm like, I have to have one of those. And that was, to be honest, that was the motivation for like, well, if I get one of these, I kind of have to build something around it. So I get one of these. Now I'm stuck with, well, now what I'm going to do with it. And I love built-in. I'm an aesthetic guy and a functional guy. It can't just be functional. It has to be aesthetic and functional. So I get one of these because I love the look of a built-in. I'm like, well, I don't have a built-in. I don't have a place to put it. So guess what I have to do? I have to design a place for it to go. So the good news is we had a space about 10 feet wide and 22 feet long with no roof over it. And I thought, wow, the perfect place for this grill would be right here. I'm looking at the lake. I have this expanse. What if I had a roof over my head? I could have this RecTech grill here. Beautiful. That was the beginning. But then there's a lot of details that you have to work out between that vision and reality. And so I'm just going to walk you through a few highlights. I'm not going to get kind of too into the weeds, although Jared will tell you I'm capable of doing that. So first of all, I had a neighbor say to me, Brad, this kitchen when you're done is going to be $100,000, right? And I'm like, well, if I'd hire a contractor, it would have been $100,000. And it would have legitimately been worth $100,000. But I'm the kind of guy that I'm not going to spend $100,000 on something that I think I can do for a lot less and do myself. So I decided, you know what? Let me work with some really good tradespeople I know to do the things that I either don't want to do myself or can't do myself. And the first one was the roof. Like, I know how to frame a roof. I know how a roof should be framed correctly. I just didn't want to have to do it. So I had a local framing contractor come in, frame this simple roof, this knee wall here. I have an engineer do all of my engineering. I'm very OCD. I went to engineering school, but I know what I don't know. So I wanted an engineer to spec the beams, so I did. The beam, the LVLs, double LVLs to run down here. A simple 2x8 shed roof. And this is interesting. I don't know if Jared can catch it, but remember, we didn't intentionally design this space to include an outdoor kitchen. And so when this roof was framed, I originally designed this roof with LVLs that extend and cantilever over beams. There was no future thought for another roof hanging off of this. So I had my engineer help me spec these custom steel brackets that I had custom welded and attached to the LVLs so that we can attach a smaller LVL beam that would allow us to hang these rafters that extend over to the knee wall over here. Believe it or not, I was able to get this entire roof framed, including materials, for about $3,000, okay? So that's important because that's probably the most substantial structure I had to get in place first before I could do anything else. And I wasn't going to try to tackle that myself. It took 2 days. That was 6 months ago. And everything else you see here I did myself, with the exception, and we'll talk about this later, my sub panel for all my electrical out here, because we have probably more electrical outlets outside here in the kitchen than we have in our house. And we're big on having outlets everywhere. I wasn't going to touch wiring the panel, and I wasn't going to touch splitting the power in the crawl space. I had a licensed electrician do that. But all the other wiring I've done myself so far, okay? Again, huge money saver because frankly, running simple circuits from a panel to outlets is not a big deal for most people, but wiring with high voltage and power, I wasn't going to deal with. Anyway, let's come back to the overarching project. So we thought, well, what do we want? Well, we have the grill, but we like to entertain in the summer. We live on a lake, and so we needed refrigerators. So we have a refrigerator here and a refrigerator here. But we also need running water. So we have a sink that we're going to locate here. And then we started to think about storage. Because again, we have air fryers, small microwaves, the occasional griddle we might want to pull out. And by the way, over adjacent to the grill, our vision was to locate a pizza oven right here. And by the way, we're going to go with the Gaston. So the Gaston people, look for that in the future. It's the one that's gas only, and it's a big mama jama, and it's going to sit right here. We started speccing out countertops, and we have about 20, 30, about 60 linear feet of counter space. And if we'd done this in granite, this would have been $15,000 to $18,000. We're going to do this in concrete, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. There's a million different ways you can do concrete countertops, and you'll notice this is a pretty substantial structure right here, and these are LVLs, and I'll talk about those in a minute. And they're LVLs because, again, I'm OCD, and I want to make sure that if I pour in-place concrete countertops, that I have this, and we wanted this to be floating in order to function both as a countertop, a bar top, in an entertainment area with no storage underneath, and it's a free span, almost 11 feet. We wanted to make sure this bad boy could support the concrete countertops. And why concrete countertops? 2 reasons. 1, aesthetic. My wife and I both love concrete when it's done right. Number 2, that $18,000 granite countertop, when we're done with the concrete and we do it ourselves, it's going to probably run us about $1,000. So that's worth the hassle. Anyway, coming back to the overarching theme of the kitchen. So sink, refrigerators, wood pellet stove, pizza grill, bar/countertop, all concrete. TV, of course. I'm a big golf nut and college football nut. And so in North Carolina, we enjoy a lot of weather during golf season and college football season. So I wanted to be out here and enjoy that. But what you'll also notice is we have some beautiful properties next to us on both sides. And we love our neighbors. But sometimes we want a little privacy. So this space here will, while it's open today, will ultimately end up being a louvered space that we can vary the amount of privacy we have so that if we want to entertain and not have to have a conversation with next door neighbors, we can do that. The ceiling we did on the original porch, believe it or not, is pre-finished flooring. It's engineered flooring. And every time people come over, they complimented me on this and they go, "What is that?" I'm like, "That's flooring." "How did you think about that?" And I said, well, engineered flooring is really stable in environments with a high range of humidity, going from low humidity to high humidity. Well, we're on the lake. So in the wintertime, believe it or not, humidity here gets really low. but in the summertime it can spike pretty high. So we wanted something that could not buckle or cup or, you guys have seen this on ceilings before. The wood moves. We wanted something that was real wood, that looked beautiful, that was easy to clean because, by the way, in the summertime with a lot of humidity, once a year maybe you need to clean off your surfaces. We wanted something that was very durable to do that. So we're going to put the same material, matching material, on the ceiling over here. Well, you'll also notice we've pre-wired for electrical heaters. We have electrical heaters in our original cottage screen porch, and we love them, but they require a lot of voltage, so you have to plan ahead, and we've accommodated it for in our panel. So we have heaters that'll take care of this area, and we also have heaters that'll take care of this area in the wintertime when we're out here grilling. What's nice about these electrical heaters is obviously you can control them via remote control, but you do have to plan for the size of the wire, the circuits that you have in place, because they do draw a lot of amperage. The grill, I have this gorgeous from barbecuegrills.com that slides in and out underneath the grill, which is a perfect place for my wood pellets. I have another stainless door here, gives me access to more storage, another one on the other side. This is completely open and free floating. And the idea was we wanted a place to be able to entertain, act as a bar area, but also have bar stools. So if we want to hang out and watch what's on TV, we can do so. If we want to use this as a table. So if we have 6 or 8 guests and we want to have a shrimp fest or a shrimp boil, whatever, and we want to have dinner here, we can do that. And by the way, you can notice the way that we designed the width of this, it's not super generous in width, but we didn't want to impinge on our more common area over here. So we're super excited about that. Again, being the OCD guy I am, I was really careful to make sure that we had electrical boxes that will allow us to trim out so everything looks flush. It's not sitting. Not judging people who do this. There's no issue with surface mounted boxes. Aesthetically, it's not my thing. So everything I did, I made sure that the boxes would sit flush. For example, if you see this box over here, I routed out a 1/2 inch of depth so that I could inset this box so that by the time we trim it out, this will all be flush. So all built in and super custom. You'll also notice I've got a lot of wires running everywhere, and here's why. Not only do we need accent lighting, I'm going to have LED accent lighting on the countertops. I'm going to have accent lighting all the way around the perimeter of the roof. And I needed a place to add LED lighting to this existing ceiling, so I'm going to locate a spot that I've run power to right up in that little alcove. I haven't cut a hole out for it yet. That's where my transformers for the LED lighting will be located, and I'll have a little access panel. Let's talk about this guy. So I said I went to engineering school, but I'm real big on using tools and things that complement my knowledge. And so after having done a ton of research on concrete countertops, particularly pour in place, and how to achieve a surface that would never crack or was highly resistant to ever cracking, I discovered there's a certain inflection limit that you need to be able to achieve so that the concrete itself doesn't flex more than it's designed to so it won't crack. Well, this is where AI comes in. So I went to Grok and I said, hey Grok, if I use a standard 1.75 inch thick LVL, a 2.1E engineered beam, which is a standard beam you can buy at any lumberyard, and I'm spanning 11 feet and I'm supporting 600 pounds and I don't want deflection to be more than 0.17 inches, could I achieve that design criteria by taking an LVL beam, ripping it into 3.5 inch tall mini joists and pairing them in 2, 4, 6, 8 groupings total. So I've got 8 LVLs, 3.5 inches tall, 11 feet long. And Grok did all the calculations and said, not only will you achieve it, but you'll be double the limit that you're after. I had a good buddy here at the lake come with his fancy fest tool. For those of you guys who are tool geeks, you'll know what a fest tool is. Just Google it. These are very expensive German tools. And we ripped those LVLs down to size, and then I used structural lag screws to bolt everything up. And it may not look like much, but this took me through trial and error to get all of these things fitted perfectly, probably working part-time, 3 or 4 hours a day over a period of 3 weeks to get it perfect. And now when you, this thing is like concrete. It's not going anywhere. And by the way, if you're concerned about weight, this is an 8x8 beam, solid southern yellow pine beam that supports both the roof and goes down to a solid footing. All of this is bolted off. The engineering rating on the lag bolts and the 1/4-inch L brackets I have to support it, this is about 6,000 pounds of shear force. So you could drive a truck over this. At this end, you'll notice we're on Trex. And Trex is very flexible, so I had to come under the deck and block solid underneath both of these legs. This thing ain't going anywhere, ever, in my lifetime. Promise you. We'll be putting accent lighting in what was the previous beam, puck lights, LED lights coming down. And yeah, I mean, that's as far as we've gotten. I didn't mention this, but I think it's worth noting. Most people, when they build outdoor kitchens, this is pressure-treated southern yellow pine. It's strong as an ox. Most people will build their ribs, I'm calling them ribs, you might call them joists. They'll use the same pressure-treated lumber. I didn't want to do that. Why? Again, I'm OCD. I didn't want there to be any flex in the substructure that supports the concrete. So I looked at a variety of materials, and steel is clearly the most rigid. Interestingly enough, there's one company in particular that does a good job of supplying 1-inch square steel tubing for outdoor grills. It's not inexpensive, and I'm all about value. Number one. Number two is the sizing, the length of the tubes they sell didn't particularly work for my application. So I found a company that sells square tubing for fencing. So it's galvanized, and it's actually a thicker gauge than what most people use to build their barbecue countertops. Additionally, FarmTech, which is a very popular online retailer, that supplies the farming community with a million kinds of things, including 1.5-inch, very heavy gauge galvanized steel tubing for building greenhouses. So there are a few things that I needed the 1.5-inch for. I didn't need it everywhere. And then the 1-inch square tubing I'm using to support the countertops. Again, over-engineered, I'm sure, but I'm a one-and-done guy. I never wanted to have to do this again. I never wanted to have any regrets. So I'm in the process of installing these ribs approximately every 16 inches on center. I could have done it 24 inches on center, but again, I do overkill. What will sit on top of this, interestingly enough, 1/2-inch hardy backer, tile backer, which is not structural, but doesn't need to be because these are structural. And it's important to note that when you do a GRFC pour, glass reinforced concrete, the concrete, once it fully sets, supports itself. So this is almost superfluous to the countertops, but it's essential when you're doing the initial pour, okay? And why hardy backer versus plywood? When we get wind-driven rain in the summer months, even though we're covered by roof, the rain pours in. So I wanted something, even after waterproofing, that if water migrates in any way to the substructure, I have pressure treated, I have galvanized steel, and now I have on top of that a water resistant tile backer board that I'm going to waterproof on top even before I install the concrete. This is Go Board by Johns Mansville, and I love this product. It's not structural, it's a foam core with a fiberglass scrim. I'll be using that on the linings where the refrigerators go. I originally thought I might use it under my concrete, but I decided that I needed something with that was a bit more stout, and I was a little concerned about how strong the Go Board would be over these steel ribs. And there's another consideration. At least in this immediate vicinity where the grill is set, the temperatures on the back of this Rectech pellet grill, and I've used a laser. Is it a laser?
It's like a infrared.
Yeah, infrared. Thank you.
Something
Jared.
like that.
We bought an infrared temperature gauge, and we cranked our Rectech grill up as high as it would go to see how hot it got and where it got hot the most. And on the back of that Rectech grill, right here, it'll reach almost 450 degrees. So I was a little concerned about using the foam board immediately adjacent to the grill. And it's for that reason that we're going to use hardy 1/2-inch backer board around this perimeter area. We may still use the go board in other areas, but in this immediate perimeter area, we wanted something that was 100% non-combustible. This is also an important consideration. A lot of people will wire a kitchen like this with 3 or 4 circuits. I have 12 circuits in my sub panel. And the reason for that is, and I also use, this is also a bit of an over-the-top thing, but we use 12 gauge instead of 14. Most people would use 14 gauge Romex. We use 12. Why? I wanted to be able to run 1,500 watt appliances on every outlet in this kitchen at the same time. Blenders, air fryers, whatever. If we're entertaining and we have a group of 30 or 40 people, I don't want to have breakers going off. Most electricians will advise you against doing that for 2 reasons I've discovered. One is they'll think, well, it's more expensive. Well, what does that really mean? On a project of this size, the difference between 12 and 14 gauge is probably $300-400, so that's practically nothing. There is another consideration as the person who's having to wire all the receptacles that I will say is a valid one, which is the wire. You wouldn't think that the difference between a 12 and a 14 gauge wire is a big deal until you're in this little box and you're trying to wire the receptacle and push it all back in. Trust me, brother. The difference between 12 and 14 gauge is huge. And so I was cussing myself frequently when I'm like, why did I do this? I kept reminding myself, I did this so that we could run all these appliances anytime we wanted and no breakers would ever kick off.
So someone wouldn't have to use 12 gauge?
No, you don't have to use 12 gauge.
Can you mix 12 and 14? Like if you
Absolutely.
Okay.
Within a circuit you can't. So if you're running a circuit of receptacles, those circuits need to all be either 12 or 14 gauge.
Got it.
Right?
So if someone's planning...
And by the way, this is important. Your breaker would be sized to accommodate your wire size. So I have 20 amp circuits in here. A 14 gauge Romex is not going to support a 20 amp circuit. You're going to be on a 15 amp circuit. 15 amp circuit is what 99% of almost every circuit in every house in America has. Again, being the OCD guy I am and planning for entertaining and a lot of people being here maybe 2 or 3 times a year, I didn't want the embarrassment of the annoyance of, hey, I have to go reset a breaker. The blender went off. I'm like, we made too many margaritas. No, I want my stuff just to work. So that's why we chose 12 gauge over 14.
So if someone's planning an outdoor kitchen like this, they could, if they don't want to spend the money on 12 gauge for everything with that many circuits, they could
have some that are 12, some that are 14. So for example, this outlet and this outlet are tied together on a circuit. They're on a 12 gauge circuit. This outlet and this outlet are on their own circuit and they're 12 gauge. But you could say, well, what's the likelihood I'm going to run a bunch of appliances over here? Not very. Just do 14 there. That's fine. And so you would just put a slightly smaller breaker in the panel for that circuit. But I think the more important thing is to remember is having built homes years ago, when I detoured out of the tech industry, and having built many homes and renovated many homes over my 40-year career, there's nothing more annoying than electrical circuits tripping off, especially when you're entertaining. So I was a little over top of that.
Why did you choose the grill that you did versus like a gas or a propane?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Jared. So we have a very nice standard, mobile propane gas grill over there. I just loved the idea of being able to both grill and slow cook with full electronics, Wi-Fi enabled Bluetooth app, precision control, a 225 degree slow cook for 24 hours and never have to come out and babysit. For those of you who are familiar with RecTech or just pellet grills in general, here's a hopper. I fill that hopper to the top and I do a 200 degree slow cook. That hopper can probably last 24 hours. So if you're into like a pork butt or a brisket, boom, there you go. And you don't have to babysit it. You have a mobile app. It tells you precisely what temperature is at all times. It monitors it for you. So I love the idea of that. The second thing I loved is I love the aesthetic look of built-ins. Most 99% of wood pellet grills to me look like old oil drums that have been cut in half, turned into grills. And they're functional, but they're ugly as sin. I wanted something that looked beautiful. It looked like an appliance. It looked like it was built in. And yes, it was pricey when compared to its equivalent functional, not built-in version. But hey, we all like what we like. When you look at built-in pellet grills, wood pellet grills, there are only about 4 or 5 in the world that are made by anybody. Like there's not like 100 of them. And the Rectic guys, I think they're out of Georgia. By the way, shout out to them because they are super responsive. They manufacture all their gear in Georgia. If you have an issue, you get online. I mean, they're really super responsive. I had a concern about the display right after we got it and we used it the first time. Look, you got a 5-year labor and material warranty. This concern that you have, we're not concerned about it, but just know that if it ever turns into something that we need to address, you're covered. So I think who doesn't like a horn? I mean, come on. That's kind of badass, I'm just saying. But I think it was the combination of the size of the hopper, the user community raves about the usability of the app. We've used it several times and love it. And the aesthetics of it being built in. And then combined with, I can grill. So a lot of people don't appreciate the fact that my wife and I did a test on this. So we're going to get a Gaston pizza oven, but on a lark we said, what if we put a pizza stone in here? Just crank this bad boy up as hot as it will go. So we got out here and the Rectech temperature probe, once it gets over 500, it won't give you a precise temperature. So we just cranked it all the way up. It just says 700-ish. We put our own Bluetooth thermometer in there. It got to 750 degrees. Well, at 750 degrees, you can cook pizza. So we did. The pizza was fabulous. We also put steaks on here at 700 degrees. Seared them like nobody's business. So even though you don't get the same open, aggressive flame reaction from a steak cooking on a gas grill, you can get to the same temperature as a gas grill. But more importantly, you can control the temperature way more precisely. And when I'm not cooking at high temperature, I can cook a pork butt or a brisket for 24 hours unattended. So the idea of being able to combine essentially 2 appliances into one was a huge game. Well, like I was sold on that. Because otherwise, what you'll notice in a lot of outdoor kitchens is they'll have both a wood pellet grill or a smoker like a green egg, and a gas grill. We didn't want to have to take up that much counter space for 2 separate appliances, if that makes sense. All right, so another really important consideration on this project that I spent considerable time researching was, how do I want to do my drawers and cabinets? There's an emerging set of very expensive, very, very lovely pre-built outdoor cabinets made from stainless. It looks like a standard interior cabinet. That cabinet would run, for a 24-inch cabinet, might run $600-800. So do the math. So what most of us DIYers do is we build the structure out of wood and then we skin all of this. By the way, I haven't even talked about how I'm going to skin this. We'll talk about that in a minute. Some people use Trex. I'm going to be using a product called True Exterior I'll talk about in a minute that will look like 10-inch nickel gap or shiplap. You place stainless doors and drawers into the appropriate holes that you frame. So I just framed this week. So that's an example of where it would go, okay? Here's a really important consideration. First of all, a bit of a call out to Wildfire Grill Company. They manufacture grills and custom outdoor stainless drawers and doors, and even pull out trash bins. Here's one of their trash bins. It's not inexpensive, but it's not stupid expensive. And why did I land on this? Is most people will go to Amazon or even Temu or Alibaba, and they'll see very affordable stainless outdoor barbecue grills and drawers. And if you're not careful, you'll get sucked into that world because, wow, I can get a a door for like 49 bucks. But what you discover is the door might be stainless, the frame might be stainless, but everything behind it is galvanized or sheet metal with a cheap coating on it. No offense to people who use those products because they're super affordable. Again, I wanted a one and done solution. So I went researching, is there a domestic producer of kitchen outdoor barbecue doors and drawers that is not ridiculous in cost and is 100% stainless? And I landed on Wildfire. I like the look of it, but more importantly, and I'll just give you an example of this. This is the back side of a pull-out trash bin, 100% stainless. Well, I'm out here on the lake 365 days a year. We're in North Carolina. We're about an hour north of Raleigh, just south of the Virginia-North Carolina state line. In the months of July and August, it can get extraordinarily humid. I did not want anything that would ever rust. So for that reason, we landed on Wildfire. It was a great price point for us, and I wanted everything to match. And this is the other consideration is whatever space you have to work with is whatever space you have to work with. So you have to be really mindful of how do I allocate the spaces based on the doors and the drawer sizes that are available to me. For example, let me show you. Over here, where we're going to place the TV, and we wanted 2 refrigerators. Well, a standard under-counter refrigerator is 24 inches wide. Well, by the time we allocated space for the wet area, the pizza oven, and then moving over to the grill, we had this amount of space to work with for something else. This could have been doors, it could have been drawers. So then you have to research, what are the drawer sizes, widths, and heights available to me? And so Wildfire had the perfect sizes, and again, I can't emphasize this enough, not only are the drawer fronts stainless, but when you pull the drawer open, all the hardware behind the fascia of the drawer front itself is 100% stainless. That was really important to us. Probably one of the most stressful moments I had putting this initial plan together was we had placed an order for doors and drawers with a particular online retailer for Wildfire products. And then I was instructed 6 weeks after I framed all this up, oh, we're so sorry, that's no longer available. Why was that stressful? Well, because every manufacturer's doors and drawers for outdoor barbecues are similar but slightly different. And so that's a really important consideration. When you start framing up your outdoor kitchen, you need to be really, really clear about what is going in that space, what is the size of that unit, what slot size does it need to have to slide in with precision. All of these units are made, they're fabricated, the components are fabricated in a country that uses the metric system. So that's the other big learning I had was this, for example, this opening right here, I just framed it last week. So I framed this larger space 2 months ago. But I knew that I wasn't going to frame this space until I had this in hand. Why? Because until I have this in hand, I don't actually know what the actual dimensions of this are. Because you can't rely on the listing online. It might be good enough, it might not. And I want my tolerances to be pretty spot on. I don't want to have a lot of slop in here when I frame. So that's another important point is pick your vendor, pick your manufacturer, pick who you're going to use, frame the basic structure, but wait on this smaller space that you're going to slide the units into until you actually receive the product, so you know exactly how to space that out. So that's the highlights at this point. You know, I've probably got 3 calendar months into the project so far. I've probably got 1 man month of effort so far into it. I'm estimating that I probably have another man month of work to do. So, you know, do I finish in 3 months? Maybe, I don't know. It's the summer. Like, I want to be on my jet ski. I want to be on my boat. So it might take me 3 months. On the other hand, we've got some people visiting us from out of town, so I have a little motivation. I might actually try to kind of like really double down and get this done. Because remember, I'm retired now. I started 3 companies. I'm not interested. This is not my job. I'm doing this for fun and I enjoy it. And I don't want it to be so overwhelming that it feels like a job. So that's where I'm at today. Obviously, we're not done. And there's still a bit of work to do. And some of that work is not simple work. And so what I'm about to say is subject to revision, okay? But I've had a number of my friends up here who live at the lake and come up from Raleigh occasionally, from other parts of the country, say, man, this has to be a $100,000 bill. And I'm like, no way. And they're like, well, how much? And I'm like, I think all in, and this will shock you, maybe, maybe not, including the RecTech grill, including the built-in refrigerators, including the plumbing and the sink, including the countertops, including the lighting, including the trades that I had to hire to help me with the panel and to frame the roof. Oh, we didn't even talk about the roof. I've got a 24 gauge Kynar 12-inch standing seam metal roof on this section that matches the roof adjacent to it. Including that, I think there's a chance all in I could do this for 20 grand. 20 grand. And if I do that, that's bank, because I've talked to a few people who eyeballed this, said they wouldn't touch it for less than 90 to 100 grand. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is it's a lot of work. I don't want anybody watching this thinking, hey man, in a couple of weekends, look what this guy did. He spent 20 grand and built a $100,000 kitchen. He just knocked it out. No. It's a lot of work. And when you get into it, you appreciate now why the trades have to charge what they charge. It's a lot of, in this smallest space, it doesn't look like it maybe from the surface, but even just building this countertop right here, this structure to support the concrete properly, this was an engineering and fabrication chore. I mean, literally chore. And I enjoyed every minute of it. But this was not simple, it was not easy, and it took a bit of time. Now, I don't say that to intimidate anybody. Any reasonably motivated person could do this. But it wasn't simple. And it took time, and it took effort, and it took some thinking. So if you enjoy a puzzle, which I do, I like solving problems. I like taking challenging situations and teasing them apart and putting them back together. If you enjoy that kind of work, you could totally do this. But make no mistake, this is not like a 2-weekend job. But you know what? In the end, I had a gentleman who we've become good friends with who said to me, Brad, I said, you know what you get to say when you're done? You did it yourself. And there's a lot of satisfaction in that. So you just got to highlight an overview of everything that we're doing. We'll do at least 2 more videos. One prior to the installation of the concrete countertop. There's a lot of prep work that still needs to be done to finish up the electrical, finish out the spaces where we're going to install the doors and drawers. We need to skin all the cabinets with a product called True Exteriors, which is it's a shiplap product. Most people are familiar with hardy siding. It's like hardy siding, only it's made out of ash, polyash material, so it's completely impervious to water. It won't expand and contract. Literally, you could put it in water and it would never be harmed. So we'll catch up with a video that shows us just prior to the concrete countertop install. We'll then do for sure a video doing the concrete install, because that's going to be a beast. And then we'll do an after when we're completely done. And hopefully when we shoot that video, you'll see a complete, beginning to end process and appreciate what goes into it and understand the sequencing and understand the considerations and the important details that you need to kind of work out. As you anticipate getting to things like, oh, we're pouring concrete. Oh, is it going to support it? Well, we should have figured that out before we started pouring concrete, okay? And that's, I think, one of the things I appreciate about my wife's attitude about this is that because I'm doing the work and because she knows I'm being meticulous about the work, she's not asking me every 5 minutes when it's going to be done, because she knows when it's done, it's going to be right. If it's a space you're going to have to live with for years, don't be in such a hurry. Like, take the time to figure out how you want it to function. Take the time to think through the aesthetics that matter to you most, and then take the time to do it right. Because let me tell you, it would be very expensive to have to undo a lot of this stuff as we get further along. So hopefully that's useful and helpful to you guys, and look forward to the next video.